Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Olwen. This is part 2 of my series, The Sounds of Undermine. This one, Enter the Riff, is much more music focused, much more formally attuned to the music itself. I've also added parts regarding jazz's relationship to Hollywood and the Hollywood influences that we do see in the Undermine. So hey, enjoy. Now, when I first stepped into the Undermine zone in patch 11.1, I didn't just hear ambient sound or background flare. I heard the intense wailing of a steamy, brassy saxophone.
All paid. Move along.
As you can see, this was not the smooth kind of jazz that sometimes I'll play in the background of my chill videos. This was the kind that swings, that's unsettling, that snarls and improvises. It's that kind that belongs to the voices of the goblins. And when I first stepped into Undermine on patch day, when I heard that saxophone, I was shocked because this was alienating, this was different. This was something that was different from the swelling strings or choral bombast that Blizzard is famous for. The kind of epic, heroic, orchestral music that might echo throughout a concert hall or at BlizzCon like it was a soaring song of the Titans, but for me, jazz didn't seem to fit. Now the accent, the slang, and the brews rhythm of Renzic's worlds, all of it bled seamlessly into the saxophones, the syncopation, the Noir harmonies, and the soundtrack. It was as if the very timbre of Goblin's speech had been refracted and expanded into the music. What the performances suggest, importantly I should say, in a live jazz orchestra that featured tons of different cuts of the same song, which we have in the game files. The score that we're listening to, the full score, it confirms the nature of the goblins so much more. It confirms that they're not just comic relief. They're much more like us. And jazz is their radiant song. Now, what the soundtrack and ambience do in Undermine is more than atmosphere, it's philosophical. It recalibrates your interpretive instincts. Where previous goblin zones, let's say the island of Kazan, leaned into carnivalesque chaos with syncopated horns and accelerated tempo, some woodwind instruments and drums and comic exaggeration that was closer to the Looney Tunes soundtrack, I would say that Undermine offers far more ambiguity. This is noir jazz born from cultural memory. And jazz here performs a kind of narrative work. It tells us, without telling us, that something has changed. Goblins are not punchlines anymore. They're improvisers. The shift in tone mirrors the shift in theme. From capitalist caricature to moral ambiguity. And Renzic's world is one of uncertainty, broken alliances, invisible systems of power. Jazz here as a form thrives in that space. Its unfinished phrases and unstable rhythms don't resolve, they reflect and refract. So jazz, I want to point out in all its variations,
The swing, jive, jump, blues, two-beat Dixie, rebop, and, well, what's that? Rebop-a-da-boopity, labop-a-da-beep, rebop? Rebop. Amazing.
you've definitely heard it before because it arrives with deep roots in American cultural memory, particularly through Hollywood. For over a century, jazz has served as American cinema's most ambivalent voice. It entered the screen not just as background music, but as an aesthetic of unrest, entangled in questions of race, modernity, improvisation, and moral ambiguity. Jazz, much like goblin society, emerged in the margins of empire. The brothels, taverns, and back alleyways of colonial port cities where no system could contain it. It was born in New Orleans, a city shaped by French and Spanish empires, by slavery, by racialized segregation.
Dancing in the street with everybody else and just having a good time. And the music it sounded big, it sounded energetic, it sounded like life.
The music drew from African rhythms, blues tonalities, and military brass bands, as well as European classical music. So here we would say that unlike classical music, which often aspires towards resolution, transcendence, or some teleological climax or escape, jazz is structurally built on looped forms. So specifically we would say 12-bar blues or 32-bar AABA. Now, these don't resolve, they cycle, and they churn. Another element of jazz is improvisation. So again, we will listen to the jazz orchestra that was directed by the sound design team at Blizzard, and we will hear many different solos. So here, solos emerge in real time. They're based on listening and responding within a group, and they all work together. And then this improvisation also indicates a temporal understanding of not only rhythm, but of composition. So in other words, everything that happens in the moment happens in the moment. It's not simply directed at the endpoint of the song, the resolution, for example. Jazz forms prioritize the presence over progression. Again, it's not about where you end up, it's about how you move through. Jazz is also conversational. Whether it's a trio or a big band, the music is made in relation to others, even solos, to their phrasing, timing, dynamics. Everything is tied to a group. So here we see elements of the call and the response, as well as trading fours, and these are inherently social forms that are baked into the musical form. And the music isn't written in stone. That's really important. It's shaped by the room, the players, and the moment. So again, jazz happens with others, not alone. And that relationality is what makes it lived, real. The meaning unfolds through interaction. And for those who are interested in the academic reading of formal jazz and its relationship to the world, I would seek out Ingrid Monson and Fred Motton, who have written specifically about this. As jazz evolved, it moved from the underground scenes of, again, New Orleans, St. Louis, Chicago, and New York to places like Los Angeles. They went from speakeasies to ballrooms, as well as broadcast networks. And this movement was shaped by migration, economic uncertainty, war, and the proliferation of American mass media. So by the 1930s and 1940s, jazz had entered the American mainstream. Only partially, however, and never without tension. For example, swing bands filled dance halls while bebop disrupted their predictability. Now, once it entered Hollywood, jazz began to signal something a little different. Not just as a style or a sense of romance, not just a mood, but something subversive, something cultural. It became the voice of film noir, for example, of the outsider, of the story beneath the story. Jazz scores, expertly composed by Figures like Henry Mancini, Elmer Bernstein, Jerry Goldsmith, Alex North, and of course, popular jazz musicians like Duke Ellington and Miles Davis, they accompanied characters who lived on the margins. Drifters, femme fatales, hired killers, mooks, immigrants, addicts, and criminals. Their stories were not about resolution. They were about survival and collapse. So jazz, again, doesn't just enter American ears through records or nightclubs. For many, it entered through the movies. It's no coincidence that the first sound film, The Jazz Singer, was built around jazz. Within that film, jazz became the inaugural voice of synchronized cinema. And from there, the relationship deepened. Films like Black and Tan, Phantom Lady, Double Indemnity, Detour, A Streetcar Named Desire, Touch of Evil, The Pawnbroker, Anatomy of a Murder, Farewell My Lovely. In each film, jazz carried the emotional undercurrents of American society, of memory, of loss, of instability, of seduction, of regret. As Kevin Whitehead writes, jazz on film is never just background, just like it's never background in World of Warcraft. It's narrative logic. And therefore these films offer more than a mood. They show how jazz functions cinematically as atmosphere, critique, and existential thought. So what's this fucking guy talking about? I just want to play my video game. Okay. Fucking nerd. This fucking movie references and ideas about America. God damn it, I just want to play Mythic Plus. I just want to quickly turn to 3 tracks that were released before I even began this project by Blizzard in their album, The Sounds of Undermine, I believe. The brilliance of this, first of all, is I don't remember ever hearing or seeing a patch album drop, so that's very cool. Never seen this before. It's amazing. Now let's turn to the music itself. Hard Times in Undermine is also the Bilgewater theme, built around slow, minor key brass progressions, and a steady walking bass line. The use of a muted trumpet, which is a staple in film noir scores, adds a hushed, brooding quality to it. The harmony leans on blues-inflected motifs, where minor 7th chords and flattened 5ths convey melancholy and weariness. This is just music that sags intentionally. The second track, Vatwork Vibes, which I believe is the Steam Weedle theme, its rhythmic textures take center stage. So the percussion mimics industrial machinery. It hisses, it clanks, it has these syncopated hits, while the saxophone riffs skid atop the rhythm like oil and water. The meter is mostly in common time, but the offbeat accents create a sense of instability. Now, this is what jazz musicians usually call playing in the pocket, so riding the beat with precision but never rigidity. And finally, the third track, Shine and Rust. This is also Gallywix's combat theme in the Liberation of the Undermine raid. Now, this album closes with a bang, okay? The gritty bass tones and brass slides pulls back into the muck. And the juxtaposition of high timbre, which is like bright and shining instruments with a low harmonic density, so dark, heavy chords, tells the story. Now for Goblins, this ambition, especially that of Jaster Gallywix, always walks hand in hand with the fall. This song weirdly reminds me of the theme song for Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy from SpongeBob SquarePants. Which is also Sam Spence's jazzy 1966 NFL-inspired song, The Lineman, so there's also that. In this world where the Titans claim order and the Void whispers chaos, jazz does something radical. It occupies that middle, and it speaks between those poles. It's not heroic, it's not evil, it's mortal, it is human. So, again, what is striking about how Blizzard deploys this is they do not overplay it. There's no dramatic cue, there's no voiceover pointing the way, like, let's say, Robert Meacham's performance in the Raymond Chandler adaptation. The score is a low hum under the story, and yet it is the story. It invites listening, attentiveness. Even when you're raiding, the music shifts so that you are engaged in a different way, more actively. So you don't just move through Undermine, you tune into it. And once you do, the meaning starts to drift. You begin to hear jazz not as a clever nod, but as a structural metaphor. It tells us what kind of world we're in for. One built on improvisation, one that's haunted by failure and animated by survival. The sonic shift from slapstick chaos to noir jazz isn't just aesthetic dressing. It is a framing, a reframing of the goblin as an American figure, as a shadow or a funhouse mirror of our own culture, shaped by displacement, survival, hustler logic, and the long echo of the immigrant narrative. The goblin, like jazz, is improvised in the gaps of power. And this again is what makes jazz the perfect register for the war within. Amidst the tensions between order and chaos, of control and freedom, of creation and destruction, the goblins here emerge as a testament to the power of improvising life. They don't seek final answers, they riff, they adapt, they endure. Their existence is a reminder that life isn't a problem to be solved, but an improvisation to be performed. Again and again, in relation, in time, in swing. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like it, subscribe to the channel. I've got part 3 coming out next week. So yeah, that one's more lore and world building focused, but yeah, stay tuned. Catch you guys on the other side.